So, Tom Friedman, we've seen what's happened over the past week with Liz Cheney, with Mitt Romney, with these lifelong conservatives, these lifelong Republicans, because they will not join this personality cult. They are pushed to the sides of the Republican Party, and even more extreme people are at least people who used to be mainstream Republicans, but now rush to power, are willing to grab that power, holding on to the biggest lie that we've had in this country for some time.
Well, Joe, Mika, thank you for having me. Whenever people ask me how I feel these days, I answer with an answer that may seem like I just learned English. My answer, Joe, is country not right. Country not right. Our country's not right because we really hoped and thought maybe that what Biden was doing, getting the vaccine out, calming the waters on the surface at least, would make this big lie fade away. But what prompted me to write this column was the obvious fact that far from fading away, it's actually gained momentum, and it's gone not only wider but deeper down to the state, local level of the Republican Party, to the point where you can no longer be elected to office as a Republican anywhere unless you sign on to this lie. Now, that is bad enough. But when you then weaponize it by tying it to voter suppression initiatives in 40 plus states, you create the possibility that in 2022, 2024, that we could have minority rule. And when you do that, Joe, when you do that, you lay the foundations for civil war, because if Republicans, based on a big lie, are able to change all these laws and suppress the vote so a minority can actually win in this country, I can tell you what will happen. Democratic disenfranchised voters will not stand for that. And we will be in a real pickle. And so my bottom line is, folks, this is so much more serious a moment than you realize. We are setting the fuse to a civil war. This is not a test.
Hey, Tom, it's Willie. Good to see you this morning. I mean, one of the reasons you go all the way past the Republican Party and talk about the dangers of our democracy is what you have fundamentally here is a group of people, a major political party, flatly not respecting the outcome of elections, which is the foundation of our democracy. So as you look out over the horizon, if in fact Liz Cheney is pushed to the side and the Republican Party makes this statement in the next few days that we are on the side of the big lie, what does that look like for elections to come?
Well, Willie, it's just so troubling that to advance in the party, you basically have to now stand up and say 2 + 2 = 5.
Yeah.
You have to say that Newtonian physics, the apple didn't fall from the tree. It jumped from the ground into the tree. And when you start telling lies that big, that are at the core of your party, when you give someone like Elise Stefanik, when she is ready to take out a ladder and climb over a ladder of lies and climb over Liz Cheney with that ladder of lies, to get a job that pays $175,000 a year and free parking at National Airport. Not only shame on her, God save me from ever wanting something so badly that I would so politically prostitute myself and give up sheer truth to climb over someone who has enormous courage here telling the truth. We all need to stand with Liz Cheney, with Mitt Romney, with Adam Kinzinger, because they're not just defending the Republican Party. They are the bulwark against what could really become serious political strife if they are able to leverage this lie into voter suppression, into stealing an election. Then you really will have lit the fuse, I think, to this country.
And Claire, it's a measure of how serious the problem is when Tom and we and others can only list really a small handful of Republicans speaking out. Liz Cheney, chief among them, Mitt Romney, Adam Kinzinger, a small handful of others. But as Tom writes in his piece, the truth has to come from within. The truth has to come from within the party, and those telling the truth are being pushed to the side.
Yeah, and Tom, I am struck by the change in the Republican Party. If you look at the way Kevin McCarthy is treating Liz Cheney versus Matt Gaetz. I mean, here you have a man where there's a written confession that he's paying underage women for sex. This was the party that used to lecture us about moral majority and, the moral thing to do. and family values, and yet they're protecting Matt Gaetz and going after Liz Cheney. Is this lack of morality in the Republican Party something that you think has now become permanent, or is it fixable?
I don't think it's fixable, Claire, as long as Donald Trump is in charge of this party. That, to me, what this party has to go through, and Democrats have gone off the jag in their history too and had to go through, this party has to be in the wilderness for a while. It's got to lose 1, 2, 3 elections in order to break this fever. That is necessary. It's not sufficient. The sufficient thing is to address the things that are so agitating its white working class base that they are ready to follow this grifter and sit silent while they build a farrago of lies to really propel the party forward. So it's got to be a twofer. But one thing I know for sure, Claire, this party, this Trump Republican Party, cannot be entrusted with power, not in the White House, because people who will lie this broadly and deeply, last time they barely gave up power, next time they will not.
Tom, Michael Steele here. I want to do the what I think is the hard thing, but it's the important thing. Let's set the party aside for a moment, and because it is a cluster, you know what. What opportunities do you see in a newly created space for center-right individuals, independents, conservatives, to reformulate, terraform, new ground for a more vibrant political discourse and agenda, and just sort of let the party sort of die on the vine and not waste any more energy trying to save that which does not want to be saved? Do you see a path forward where another track can be carved out and we can begin to move forward to avoid the very thing which I agree with you on with respect to the Civil War, whether it's political or actual conflagration among Americans over politics?
Michael, I still believe it's a very good question that this is basically a center-right, center-left country. And if you look at the last election, Democrats had a clear choice. Farther left, Bernie Sanders, center left, Joe Biden. They overwhelmingly opted for the center left option. Until Republicans do the same, it's really hard to see how we make any sustainable progress. So this version of the Republican Party has got to fracture. It's got to fracture so it will lose power. It's got to lose power so it will finally sit down and reconstitute itself on the basis of center-right principles. I don't know how long that's going to take, but I don't see any sustainable progress for the country. Great democracies are always ruled from the center left and the center right working together. And that's been true of our history. It's true of other countries. But it's not going to happen overnight. And both parties are going to have to deal with the fact that the center right, the basis of the center right, the white working class voters have been deeply agitated and disturbed and made vulnerable to this kind of message. And we have to attack that. We have to attack the basis of that as well as the political manifestation.
Tom Friedman, thank you so much for joining us this morning.